country is currently swimming in. In this financial year report to Parliament, Auditor General John Mwanga is concerned that the rising public debt could cripple government sovereignty and ability to negotiate future debt agreements. Uganda is currently indebted to a tune of 41.51 trillion shillings, which is 41% of the national GDP.
For the Auditor General, the report to Parliament, like clockwork, has to be delivered every January. The report is a summation of all audits on government expenditure for a financial year. In the last financial year, government became more transparent but less accountable, according to the Auditor General, who handed over the latest report to the Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga.
We audited 1,919 audits, of which 1,863 were financial audits. These were in respect of 168 were ministries, departments and agencies, 134 were commissions and state enterprises, and 1,564 were basically local government and schools.
Among the issues raised by the Auditor General is that of public debt that is currently grossing at 41.5 trillion shillings. This, he says, is nearing worrying levels.
The revenue to GDP is actually standing at 54%, which is the highest in the East African region. We did a special audit on public debt, and we expect you to look at it in detail and see the issues that we are raising. We have concerns about the sustainability of debt. It is currently still sustainable, but if we go at the rate at which we are going, we need to be a bit careful. And there are issues therein. We are taking in more commercial loans. We are taking in more loans whose conditionalities are probably not very conducive for us as a developing country, and there are issues that we need to look at.
Debt for the financial year increased by 22% to 41.5 trillion. The debt repayment to revenue stands at 54%, the highest in the region. Government will need to spend at least 65% of its total revenue collections annually to service debt. Interest payment on debt for this financial year was 17% of the GDP.
In relation to accountability, however, I think government still has a lot to be done. When you will look at the report, the small script that we are going to give you, we have something where we've written inadequate financial controls. And in this, we have stated that mischarge of expenditure amounting to 36.9 billion was still found. Unaccounted for expenditure of 21.7 billion was still noted. Wasteful expenditure of 66.9 billion was still noted. And undisclosed domestic arrears of 371 billion. Meaning, accountability still, there is still a lot. It's still a steep curve that we have to go through.
The auditor praised government for its increased transparency in financial reporting, but was concerned that government was becoming less and less accountable. The report will be tabled before the floor of Parliament and sent to committees for further probing. There are over 16 areas that the Auditor General raises a red flag over that relate to misaccounting, misappropriation, and outright corruption. Raymond Mujini, NBS, Live at 9.
Now, Raymond Mujini will a little later on be speaking to an economic advisor from the Ministry of Finance on the same subject. But joining me in studio tonight is Julius Kapwepwe Mishambi, Director of Programs at the Uganda Debt Network. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Now, if we look at the highlights of the audit that was carried out, it indicates major challenges around planning and budgeting, which is of course very, very critical. How can we even begin to achieve efficiency in this space?
We've made tremendous effort in harmonizing budgeting together with the planning. If you looked at efforts through establishment of the Treasury single account as areas for improving accountability, but also linking the planning and budgeting, the IFMS efforts, and there are positive efforts that are happening, challenges notwithstanding, as the Auditor General, for instance, has highlighted out, but also as Parliament oftentimes as civil society organizations like Uganda Debt Network and Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group and many others have always pointed out that a lot more can still be done to improve the efficiency and efficacy in the use of our national resources.
What are some of the glaring gaps as far as planning and budgeting are concerned that we need to deal with?
I'll just take a quick example of, if you looked at a particular case of BitVet, vocalizing our students and Uganda as a case where we borrowed over $500 million for BitVet intervention, skilling Uganda, so that people have skills in anticipation of the oil resources and the very many jobs that are available in the oil sector. And every year we were expected to have graduates, skilled graduates of in excess of 450,000 students, 50% being female. How far have we gone since 2011, and given that the program ends in 2020? So there have been glaring gaps, serious shortfalls in the numbers that we expected to have by end of the day. And so that is a clear reflection of the weaknesses in the planning element in view of the oil prospects and job creation vis-a-vis what you have actually done at implementation, which has been a glaring deficit in terms of desired results at the end of the day.
And this, of course, has a spillover effect in terms of absorption on the debt, which is definitely very expensive for us. Now, we keep borrowing money and absorption is low, and there are some particular funds where the absorption is as low as 10%, according to the report. How can we close the gaps so that affect the utilization of this money, which is expensive?
One of the ways of us clearing, plugging the gap is to be sincere even about the size of the debt portfolio. Even with the Auditor General's assessment in its current status, there is a suppression of the actual debt portfolio for the country. In the assessment of Uganda Debt Network, it's already in excess of $15.2 billion, because what we call disbursed and disbursed debt is not even talked about in some of these elements. The domestic debt is not talked about. The recoverable related debt, say where we're investing in oil, but the company is investing, expect to have some money back recouped because of their capital investment at the end of the day when oil begins flowing, is not being talked about. So to be sincere about the actual size of our situation is number one. Of course, then the other one is to improve our public investment management capacities as a country, issues around steering of public resources that have come through procurement and the infighting. We'll need to plug those areas so that we can improve our own efficiency in the management.
Julius, is it possible that we're actually borrowing more money than we need?
It is very possible that we are borrowing more money than we need, to the extent that in some of the cases, as the Auditor General has highlighted out, and some of our initial researches, that we borrow and the feasibility studies are not ready. So yes, the money is available, but our level of readiness is not anywhere near. Case of the Kanunguru-Kunjiri Road, which for a long time money has been available.
I think it's about 8 years.
To date, implementation has not happened, in spite of the launching and the number of areas. So yes, there are a number of such areas.
I think one of the things that the report highlighted, and I want us to go through this very, very quickly, is on the one hand, we have unpaid liabilities in court awards and compensations, about 600 billion, and of course it's accumulating interest. And on the other hand, we have government that has won awards and it has not collected this money. What is the problem?
The problem is certainly in the configuration of the institutional regime of the day. Government, certain staff members are not serious about their work. We need to see more vigilance. Of course, there are those in certain areas that are serious, but in some of the attendant institutions, we need to see more vigilance and people doing their work, and that mainly is going to be cured through performance contracts and assessment of staff against the targets at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Julius Kapwepwe Mishambi, for joining us and for sharing your insights on the